Alright, Diablo players, so let's talk about it. Surviving Season 11 is definitely going to be a thing that you actually will consider. Unless your build is going to be doing infinite DPS and one-shotting things, you will need to actually invest heavily into defenses in Season 11. And I wanted to go ahead and make a video that was dedicated to going over some of the areas that you may want to actually start improving right now on your build, especially for those players that are interested in playing Eternal. But also, again, if you do plan to play Season 11, you can also use this video. But the reason why I wanted to also mention Eternal is because a lot of players, at least in the current game state, are considering that Season 10 characters, after even the Chaos Armor wipe, if the greater affixes still remain on the items, you are objectively going to be stronger, as of right now, we have no extra damage that we're getting. There's no seasonal power that gives us really big DPS. The new thing that we do get in Season 11 is some extra resistances and some extra armors in the Chaos powers. But if you compare that to the greater affixes, it is a night and day difference in terms of what you can get. To kind of show you guys a little representation, let's go ahead and go over that real quick. So the stuff that you get is so minor. Like, for example, you get to fortify for 1% of your maximum life. Like, it does matter, but like realistically, getting, let's say, increased resistances. Keep in mind, you can only choose like the purified or corrupted version of these. You can get maybe 20% increased resistances here, but there's no like damage multipliers here. If the purified, if we're just looking at the purified, keep in mind the corrupted one's usually some downside, but you get usually better loot. But in terms of like your character's power and survivability, this is why a lot of people are talking about they want to go into Season 11 with the Eternal character to play the new forms of content and the new update, because keep in mind the whole game is getting updated with a rework in the survivability department, and it's specifically that they just want their character to feel as powerful as possible. And honestly, you can play in the Eternal realm, especially if you already have like Paragon 250. You're going to be way stronger than most players in Season 11, unless of course they get crazy sanctification, which as far as I'm aware of is the only source of power here, and they're going to be kind of reworking that. So hopefully that will be an area. But if that thing is, you know, all base RNG, I totally get it if you just want to play an Eternal, because your character will be actually way stronger. But again, if you're looking at some of these stats here, right, where we're just looking again the purified version over here, like you get to become unstoppable every 12 seconds. That's pretty small. You can get increased movement speed, but the only like big like stuff that you may want to consider is like increased armor, and there's one that can give you increased resistances, but there's no like X 20, 30, 500% X damage. There is none of that. There is no Chaos armors in Season 11. So therefore, that's why I wanted to go ahead and get you guys prepared now, so you guys can get gear, and if the Masterworking stays on Legacy gear, you will be actually way stronger. To go ahead and actually show two examples that of the content creators, it's not just me that's talking about this, but going into the next season, this was a chart that Yugioh popped up and actually showed off, and he's giving the Season 9 example, because obviously Chaos armors are way more inflated in terms of how much power our characters have. We're just really looking at the Masterworking here in terms of the power loss, and that's why I want to prepare you guys before you go into Season 11 to have realistic expectations. So if we take a Season 9 character, again, just with a Masterworking, no Chaos armors here, we're getting basically a multiplier of 0.35, which basically we're losing out on like 2/3 of our damage. There was another video by Macro Bioboy that was talking about just with the Masterworking, we're losing out on, let's say, 40% of our power just because of the Masterworking change that we're getting in Season 11. Now, keep in mind, that was the PTR, things are subject to change. In addition to all of the power losses that are just from the greater affixes, you also have to factor in that, well, your character probably has way better loot, and we have to re-farm up the loot, and we are getting less drops overall in Season 11 up until a certain point where it starts to crank back up. They are actually nerfing the legendary drop rate again, but I'm gonna be real, it really wasn't that bad, because you can actually level up pretty fast in Season 11. It was actually faster, especially if they do not patch the brand new Asmodan farming method. But as far as the powers go, again, you're just really not getting that much power. So in Season 11, the enemies are going to hit you a lot harder. So it's not only that you're going to be a lot less powerful because of damage, but you're also going to be losing out on survivability. And this video is going to be mainly focusing in on survivability, and I'll have a dedicated one later down the line for damage. But the thing is that if you don't even survive, well, then it's going to feel even worse. So let's go ahead and go over some really great ways to survive Season 11. So I wanted to start off by mentioning that they we're going to rework all of the elites in the game, and they are definitely a lot more difficult. The thing that you got to watch out for is being like feared, frozen, stunned. All these things, you're going to feel them again. So being able to move out of the way. Now, I know we're just looking at rogue here, but every single class has a mobility option. And also, every single class has a way to break some sort of crowd control, whether it's Shadow Step or if you use the Blood Mist. There's so many other skills across the board. You definitely want to equip these. Usually also in some builds, there are some skills that can give you some sort of damage reduction. There are also a lot of other things that can give you the ability to slow or chill the enemy, and that will actually help out quite a bit, because if the enemies are chilled, well, they just simply have a slower reaction time, therefore giving you more room to kind of get out of the way of a certain thing. And also, you may want to consider specializations, like Preparation over here grants you extra damage reduction, but there's a lot of other ones that you may not normally see as like a viable option, because in your head, all you care about is DPS. I totally get that, but the thing is the monster isn't going to pop a potion. The monster doesn't have a heal. So the main thing that you should focus in on first is survivability, because things hit way harder and your HP is basically going to be destroyed a lot faster. You're going to need to get more HP on a lot of pieces of gear in Season 11. But also, I wanted to mention that also think about some of the glyphs that you normally would skip over, because all you care about is a multiplier in damage. And while getting more damage can also lead to more survivability because everything is dead, they don't want the elites to just be deleted instantly. They want you to have a little bit more interaction with them, so getting more damage reduction for a lot of players, especially if you're more casual players, will definitely be kind of key to surviving. Now that we've mentioned those sort of things, I want to go over like the pieces of gear, and these are going to be generic for all classes. Even though we're showing off rogue, I wanted to pick a bunch of stuff that every single class can use. So first off, as far as the helm goes, I'm sure a lot of you guys have known Air of Perdition is the best helmet in the entire game, not counting, of course, Chaos Armors, but the Harlequin Crest will actually be one of the better choices. And the reason why is there's no masterworking, so you can't get those core skills up. So Harlequin will actually be really great for the damage reduction, as well as just cooldown reduction is a very powerful set, which can actually give you some survivability. And we're actually getting a buff in Season 11 for getting cooldown reduction. And the reason why is cooldown reduction can now roll on the gloves, as well as a couple brand new other affixes. But Harlequin Crest will objectively be one of the better choices for a lot of players because of that damage reduction. That thing is so damn powerful, especially if you're running any sort of variant that can stack Melted Heart of Silig in it. You're going to be able to get your resources up even higher, therefore even more survivability. But it's that damage reduction and quality of life that is actually really, really strong. And again, technically, Air of Perdition does give you that critical strike chance, but getting crit in Diablo isn't really that hard in Diablo 4. But it's specifically that survivability is going to be much more difficult to get, so we're going to be buffing up our toughness. Now, honestly, Shroud of False Death is still one of the best ones. There is also Tierlist, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about a couple different other options here, but Tierlist is still a great option here, and it's going to be even stronger in the next season because, again, survivability is getting nerfed overall. So Shroud of False Death still is actually the better choice, and that's because you get all these other forms of damage reduction as well as getting extra damage for a lot of different builds. But Shroud of False Death is still going to be maintaining to be one of the best in here. It's just the helm where it kind of changes up. Now, as far as other things to consider, they're actually buffing up a lot of the different ways to get survivability in the game with specifically like life on hit, but I really like getting percent, so this way we can actually keep it up the whole time. If you want to throw this in your amulet slot, you can actually get a huge amount, because remember, it goes up by 50%, so you'd get you'd be like 3.725 for the extra heals that you get, and then that gets doubled if you are below 50% life. And this is actually a really good one for specifically recovery, because we're going to be taking more damage. Not only do we want like damage reduction, but we also need a way to kind of recover that thing quite fast. If you're playing a very fast attacking build, then this can just go up instantly. Like, it's going to upkeep your pool of HP. And remember that the potions are also getting changed in the next season as well. And, well, this is going to make it a little bit easier because, well, some of these boss fights, if you guys have not seen, you just look up tower boss fights. These boss fights last so long to the point where you need some sort of recovery. If you do not have it, you lose, you do not complete the tower, you don't get the reward. So it's important that you also consider recovery. Now, there are a few other things where you can get life per second, life on hit, but getting a percent will always maintain its value, if that makes sense, because it's always based off of a percent. So the more HP that you get, the more value that this actually gets. You don't have to put it in gloves, I just put it in here. Usually you want offensive things here, but again, I only had so much room in this little planner here. But then also consider a disobedience or juggernauts to gain that increased armor. Again, they are reworking armor and resistances. Armor is 100% the most important thing in the game. Now, I know before you could kind of get away with not capping out on armor and resistances. Honestly, the highest tier builds, the rank 1 players didn't even consider it. It's usually like a whatever sort of thing. In the new season, armor is still good, but resistances, well, you kind of need to also cap those out as well. But you can't really cap it out because they do something called like inverse multiplicative, which is kind of like this thing where you can never reach it. We're going back to basically season 0, where you didn't get like plus 5% resistance, so you'd have 5% resistances. It works as kind of a number that does kind of change with the game as you go up in difficulty. Well, it's just going to be hitting you harder. So disobedience and juggernaut are going to be kind of things that you will consider. We're actually going back to, again, season 0 here, because disobedience was one of the most popular things, and you had to basically run it to cap out an armor. Now, also great additions here, because there's a lot of boots that like your character may not need, like let's say boots that are specific unique, or you might not need like any sort of pair of boots here. So if you really want to boost up your survivability, but you don't really want to sacrifice, let's say, an aspect or something, Rachnos Wake is actually really good. And the reason why is it also gives you non-physical damage, which can help with other Paragon nodes to reach, let's say, cold damage or a certain damage type. If you're playing any elemental build, well, then you just don't really lose out on damage, because this kind of gets around the like your character's main stat here, but also gives you cooldown reduction, which is a really good stat. But it's basically utilized because it gives you resistances. Yen's Blessing can also give you it, but I think Rachnos, because it gives you cooldown, is kind of better for most builds. But on top of that, there's another change with the amulet. You no longer gain specifically the character's core main stat that you normally want to get greater affix. That's a big thing in Season 11, that we lose out on power for basically DPS in the amulet category. But there's other things that we'll talk about in a moment, but also all the classes got updated, and all the classes can run a sword now. It was kind of a thing before where like some classes couldn't run certain weapon types, and that still does apply. Like you can't run like a two-handed staff on, let's say, a rogue, but almost all the classes can run most of the one-handers right now in the game. So basically, Doombringer is actually going to be surprisingly very, very powerful, and it is a mythic, but it's a mythic that normally people would just get rid of. It did see some play back when Overpower was actually a way to actually get damage, but that got nerfed. So Doombringer is actually going to potentially be a good area for extra defenses if you maybe just want to go ahead and slot something in. It's pretty good for that maximum life. Keep in mind, you can still get a greater affix one. It's just the masterworking doesn't get as crazy, and that's why we lose out on a lot of survivability. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because if you're dead, it doesn't matter how much DPS you do if you get one-shotted, right? And then also other things to consider here. So. And Darius Visage actually gives you, it doesn't even show up. Okay, it's supposed to give you a bunch of life on hit. Now, it doesn't show up for some reason in here. They've been kind of tweaking a lot of the other builder websites because, of course, they want to update them. And so, Darius Visage does give you some survivability with life on hit, and it has that chance to do a Poison Nova, which, honestly, the damage got nerfed back in, like, after Season 5. It just really wasn't the same. It was good in Season 5, though. But Darius Visage is still a cool item, and if you get it, don't just delete it instantly, because it's incredibly good for survivability. And then also, Tyrell's Might is another item where normally people would get rid of, but it's actually pretty decent. Now, Shroud of False Death, to be real with you guys, is still like the S tier, the best. Tyrell's Might is not bad at all, though. Again, you need survivability in Season 11. It is definitely going to be something where if you watch even the top tier clears with a lot of the highest tower push builds, you have to be cautious. Tyrell's Might is still actually a pretty good item for people that kind of want more of a relaxed playstyle and not need to be super on edge. But Endurant Faith is actually a pretty decent item for survivability as well. I mean, if you guys don't know, this is actually one of the most expensive, like, it's a potion in Path of Exile called Progenesis. But that item is actually incredibly good and expensive. But in Diablo, this is like an item that normally we would junk and throw away, right? Endurant Faith. But it is actually quite good for survivability. I'll be honest though, I probably wouldn't recommend it unless like you have nowhere else to gain survivability. then throw this one in. It actually is pretty good. It's 40% of the maximum life is distributed over the course of the duration, and then obviously you can kind of recover with undying or any other ways, like life on hit or life per X amount of seconds. Also, one of my favorite items, and because they are nerfing again the masterworking, Tassets of the Dawning Sky is actually one of my favorite items to basically kind of slap it on, and almost any build will gain a huge amount of survivability. Now, the reason why Tassets of the Dawning Sky is so good is that a lot of stats are not reachable in the brand new Paragon system in Season 11 because you lose out on the masterworking for the all stats that you normally would rely on to reach those bonus nodes. So not only do you get resistances, you also get maximum resistances, and then you get like whatever damage that you take, it gives you additional maximum resistances, so it gives you additional, which that percent thing is actually way better in the new season because, well, all the resistance like formulas are changed, so it's going to be even better for specifically that. But also, again, getting all stats is a great thing to get. And then on top of that, because we lose out on the masterworking, which normally for boots and stuff we can get basically 100% movement speed on boots, you no longer can get those crits. So Tassets of the Dawning Sky actually gives you extra mobility, which then lets you kind of clear content faster because they're also nerfing our movement speed in Season 11, and that is because, well, nerfing like the Leap Quake Barbarian, the Infinite Teleport Sorc is going away, so getting extra movement speed not only helps you survive more, but it lets you kind of clear out content faster. So this is probably my personal favorite and my #1 recommendation for slapping something on, because in general in the pants category, a lot of builds you don't have to have something specific, so I really can highly recommend you guys to try that out. And then also I mentioned Yen's Blessing. Like I said before, Ragnaros is better, but Yen's Blessing, if you get it, hey, you don't have to throw it away, and it actually lets you cast another skill over here. And then next up, Melted Heart of Selig. This is going to give you a huge amount of resources, which is great whenever you take damage. They are reworking it, so don't read this thing over here, because again, this is also getting a rework from the PTR, which was already another rework of Melted Heart of Selig, so it's getting updated again. Now, they said that they're going to like kind of nerf it, but also buff it in a sense, so we're getting a buff to the survivability of Melted Heart of Selig, but then also a nerf to specifically the amount of like resources that you're able to like kind of generate with all these other like things. They said they're going to remove the caps, but they're going to limit the amount of resources that you can get in other areas. So basically expect to keep this in your back of your mind. It's not a trash item. I know before it was pretty much the Omega F tier, the spear, the staff, Shattered Valve. These are all like really bad items, but Melted Heart of Selig in the new Season 11 is actually going to be kind of good. And then also Starlight Aspect is not that bad, and the reason why it's actually pretty good, especially for any build that uses resources, because once again, more nerfs to a lot of the resource generation that we would get. A lot of times, if you looked at a lot of builds in Season 10, and even before that, we would have some sort of percent regen. Right now, the hot thing with, let's say, Sorc is the Frost Nova to basically regenerate all your resources. Like, it's a one button, because they nerfed percent resource generation on, like, hit or lucky hit chance. All of those now give flat numbers, which is way worse because, well, with lucky hit chance, you could just keep on hitting and it would just go instantly. So it is a big nerf, especially when it comes down to bosses, because there's not enough targets. But the Starlight Aspect will gain primary resource for every 20% of life that you heal. So that's really good because remember, you're going to be taking a lot more damage because everything's harder in Season 11. Therefore, if you recover it with, let's say, Undying, Life on Hit, this one is actually a pretty weird thing that this is like in the ring department or the amulet. Starlight Aspect can actually be pretty good for a lot of builds. And then also just in general, attack speed is going to be actually more important because if you get any life per hit or any sort of activation on hit or applying chill or any of these debuffs on the enemies, the faster that you can attack, it's actually going to help out. Like Andaros is actually really good when you combo, you have also lucky hit chance to activate your stuff more often, but like Andaros gives you crazy amounts of life per hit. So this could be another way to survive, is basically just attacking so fast that your recovery exists. Because once you guys get into the towers bosses, they said that they were going to rework the tower bosses as well, so take everything that we're saying with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of things to kind of factor in here for Season 11 and not dying. And again, even if you're on Eternal, everything is getting updated, so I want you guys to get ready. And honestly, one recommendation that I can also give you guys is right now, pick a pair of pants of Tassets of the Dawning Sky, and then masterwork it all the way. If you want to, you can get the correct masterworking, but honestly, I would just say masterwork it all the way, just in case that our legacy gear actually is stronger. Now, there's no confirmation on this, but I'm just trying to give you guys a mindset. If you already have the gear, maybe you're like, I got this unique, whatever, it's trash. Just hold on to it and masterwork it now. And that the reason why I'm telling you guys to do this now is because when Season 11 rolls around, if you want to play an Eternal, your gear in Eternal if things go legacy. I don't know, again, if this is going to change, if they're going to basically just remove all your masterworking, which honestly, that'd be super scumbag if they just removed all your masterworking. But in the new season, because you cannot crit on the masterworking, the old gear will be stronger than the new gear. And I already kind of went over this, right? Like the difference between getting this and your old gear, it's night and day difference. This stuff does not really matter. Like the things that matter, you get 20% more resistances and 20% more like armor. That's the only stuff that you get. There's also one that gives you up to 30% movement speed, but if you just masterwork crit movement speed and then also tempered on movement speed, because remember, in the new season, you only get 1 temper, not 2. So all of your gear objectively becomes way worse because, well, you lose out on all that stuff. Another things I was considering, also temerity isn't bad. Penchant Greaves is actually pretty good because remember, you lose out on all the crit that you normally get. So some builds you may want to consider running Penchant Greaves. If you're playing the Sorc, you can run the boots to give you crit based on movement speed. There's going to be a lot of areas that we're going to have to kind of like, you know, juggle our hands and kind of run other things that we may not normally consider. But I was also thinking that, like, because they're changing up a bunch of the numbers, Razorplay actually might be interestingly, like, it's not great for survivability at all, but it may actually be pretty good if they change some of the stats around. We'll wait and see what they do because they said they were going to actually nerf a lot of the bosses, and we might be able to actually utilize Razorplay in another way. I'll talk more about this in another video because I feel like this video is long enough already, but just guys, consider keeping some older items if you don't mind playing on Eternal. And actually for me, at the moment, unless they update us, I'll definitely check out Season 11, like, and I'll play a seasonal character, but I think it actually will be in your benefit if you want to go for rank 1. I'm not even kidding. Playing on non-seasonal is going to be, for once, is the only time I think that we've ever had the season be weaker than Eternal if things are still going to maintain their relevancy with, again, those greater affixes. So if you have like a Doombringer or all these legacy gear, this is the time where you will have an item that is so powerful that you literally cannot get an item ever in the game unless they redo the masterworking, unless they go back on it. I don't know. But anyways, just some stuff to consider, as well as just going over survivability. Even if, again, some of this stuff does not change, you guys can still have that mindset of, like, you know, what things to kind of look out for coming out in Season 11. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the video. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it, and sub if you're new here, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.